Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, it's the delight for many kids and the nuisance for many adults, snow days.
Today, we defrost memories of snow days of the past and how they're changing amid our busy lives and a warming climate.
Plus, libraries are so much more than books. We sit down with the WDET's Jeff Milo, a Ferndale Library employee, to go beyond the aisles.
But first, and relatedly, reading is one of the most beneficial life skills that we could have. It opens up so much: economic opportunity, quality of life, lifelong learning and curiosity, and personal expression. But reading abilities for students in the U.S. aren't where they should be. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, often referred to as the nation's report card, 1/3 of 8th graders nationwide test below NAEP's basic reading level.
But, Robin, a new pilot study by the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute and Shoelace Learning shows promise for gamified learning as an effective reading intervention. Julia Dexter is the founder of Shoelace Learning, an education platform that developed the games used in the pilot study. She spoke with senior producer David Lyons about how gamified learning can improve reading skills in students.
Literacy in Michigan is a problem. In 2023, in Detroit, 8th graders, only about 5% were reading at a proficient level. So can you talk about how we assess literacy and what goes into that?
Sure. So there's a national assessment in 4th grade and 8th grade. In 2024, there was another assessment that was released. And unfortunately, the scores have gone down again. So our literacy outcomes throughout the United States are really, really poor. In fact, 1/3 of 8th grade students are really not reading at basic levels right now. And when we really think about that, you know, one out of every 3 of our kids is not able to read basic text. It's a real problem. And when we look at Michigan specifically, Michigan for their 4th grade scores was 44th on the list out of compared to the other states. So there's real room to grow here. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk about improving literacy over the years, and we had a huge amount of literacy loss over COVID, but we just haven't been able to kind of turn the tide. And so what's so exciting about what we're seeing at Shoelace is this is a program that's actually helping kids demonstrate that growth quickly because of engagement.
Yeah, let's talk about that engagement part a little bit. First, I think you need to define for us what gamified learning is in the first place.
Sure. So a lot of people think of gamified learning as maybe just collecting some badges or, you know, a cool interface, but this is really different. So what we've been able to design is quite novel in the market. We use the motivation that comes from games. You know, when you watch your kids play games and you're just so frustrated because they don't want to get off the technology. Well, we use that same motivation to drive them back to the learning over and over again. So the content is actually delivered in the game experience, which is a very, very different experience for kids. And it's one that really is proving to drive outcomes.
And how is that different from, and I'm 35 years old, so
Sure.
I'm a millennial in my elementary and middle school years, definitely more in middle school. I do remember some early days computer games that were meant specifically for learning. They take us in the computer lab, which had some new blocky, very slow computers, but I remember this reading character named Marlou. I remember, I think it was called Reader Rabbit, these old games.
Yeah.
Is Shoelace Learning kind of somewhere along the line of those kind of technologies, or is it different somehow inherently?
No, it's much, much more sophisticated in that every game has a core loop. And that core loop is designed to get kids to keep re-engaging and re-engaging. You know, it's what kind of, when we look at games in a really negative fashion, it's what we would think of as what's addictive about games. And what we do is we use that core loop and find the moments that are highly motivating for kids. And we don't let them engage in those moments until they've been engaged in the learning content and proven that they've practiced and mastered that content. So we're really leveraging that really highly motivating part of games and even the positive failure in games to be able to get kids to keep trying. And that's often a big part of the problem with learning is we want to keep kids in that space of being motivated to keep trying and to gain confidence. So it's a very different approach than what we've seen before, and one that's really proving to work.
That it's really interesting. You mentioned the kind of the core loop idea and how that's the way we typically think of games being addicting, and it makes me also think of screen time and devices, and there's a whole bunch of dialogue about screen time and screens, social media being addictive for children and having negative education or literacy outcomes for them. So I'm curious, how do you balance that idea of screen time and device use with learning outcomes, and how much of it is fear and how much of it is well-founded concern, in your opinion?
I think it's very well-founded concern. As a mom of four and as somebody who's been in this industry now for over 10 years, in game-based learning specifically, I think the use of technology is something that we as educators, as parents, have to keep a very, very close eye on. I think it's really important to recognize that not all technologies, not all games are built to be equal. And so it's really up to us as those who are kind of learning guardians, those who are helping kids navigate, growing up in a digital world, to help kids understand what's going to be kind of a healthy content diet for them, if that's the way you want to look at it. We can really use technology for good, but it has to be designed well, and it has to be designed very, very thoughtfully. And if our kids are engaging with technologies that aren't designed with their growth in mind, it can be a big problem. And we can't just ignore that. And right now, I don't think we've put our attention to that yet enough as parents, as educators. And I think that's changing. And it's time to really make sure that our kids are in a healthy environment.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like in this case, we're kind of meeting students where they're at. If kids are used to using digital technology, their learning materials are all in some form on a screen, whether it's when teachers are devising the materials or they're seeing it or they're reviewing it. It's not uncommon for most classrooms to have a set of laptops for all the students, and it seems like that's just more of the language and the tools that we use in education today. You just released what looks like some pretty promising data that you found about your gamified learning that Shoelace Learning is doing. Can you just tell us what this pilot study found and what this data set really looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, this research study was done by Michigan Virtual, which is a leading educational institution in the state of Michigan. And they recruited 6 different school districts throughout the state. And we had 13 schools who used Shoelace over an 8-week time frame. And the goal was to understand if over that 8-week time span, we'd be able to engage kids to continue to want to read and learn. But even more so, if we could see any kind of early learning outcomes. 8 weeks is a short amount of time to see learning outcomes, and we implemented this pilot at the start of the school year when things are busy, kids are just getting back from summer. So there was a lot of kind of challenges with being able to see great results with this study. But the study results were really nothing short of outstanding. Kind of blew our socks off, even though we've seen in our data for years these kinds of results. But to have kind of a third-party assessment of these results is huge. So the first big result for us was the fact that 99.7% of the students in the study activated their accounts and wanted to play. And so normally a good result in a study like this would be somewhere around 65%. So just the activation rates alone, and if you're not going to use the program, you're not going to get better. So this is a really important baseline metric. But when we're looking at the learning outcomes, 90% of the kids increase their vocabulary, which is directly linked to literacy. We know that 70% of the kids increase their confidence as readers, and 42% of the students in the pilot were able to accelerate their reading skills beyond what was expected over that 8-week period. So really outstanding outcomes and outcomes that haven't been seen in this space yet. So we're really encouraged about the potential to go further.
It seems like 90% increase in vocabulary that's a phenomenal statistic. Are you hearing from educators any feedback about how it goes from in-app engagement to the classroom or elsewhere in the real world, maybe just reading books at home or going to the library?
Absolutely. The feedback from teachers, albeit not kind of data that we collect as kind of objective numbered data, but the feedback from teacher surveys has been exceptional. And the teachers have continued using Shoelace post-pilot. In fact, 80% of the students who were in the study continue to use Shoelace regularly. And so we're really encouraged, and we're working closely with these schools to continue to implement multi-year plans where we can start to really push that growth. For me, working with educators and education leaders who are serious about turning the tide on literacy is really important. And we're starting to see that more and more principals, superintendents, directors of curriculum in the state really leaning in to say, we have to make a difference here, guys. Like, we can't be okay with this. And what can we do that's different? How can we innovate in this space? So we're really excited about how this is an example that other districts can follow.
I'm curious about the literacy pedagogy that you all use, what your strategy is. I've heard about the Fontes and Pinnell method. I've heard about phonics. How do you all take the existing literature, the existing just professional wisdom that's shared by so many different educators and literacy specialists? What is your strategy and kind of your educational foundation for this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the science of reading has really come back as an important approach over the last several years. And where we've seen a big movement is in the early reading skills, kids who are just starting out maybe before school up to about grade 2, where they're learning their basic reading skills. And there is a deep science there to drive what we're doing. But where we haven't focused as much is above that grade 2 level. So kids who are in grade 3 and up, who continue to learn how to read. You at that point you have basic reading skills, and then you're working on comprehension and fluency, and that goes up through high school. And this is where our kids are really, really struggling. A lot of these kids at that grade 5 level were the ones that were hit hard by COVID. They were the ones that were, out of the classroom for long periods of time. And so they really need the support, and they're in these older grades where you often don't get that support. And we're really laser focused on helping these kids. And everything we've done is research backed and focused on the science of reading. And where technology can really help is it can help pinpoint specifically which kids are facing challenges and specifically where those challenges are. And then it's able to identify what remediations those kids need. So it's so assistive to teachers. It's very hard to be a teacher in a class with dozens and dozens of kids, and to pinpoint where the challenges are and then to offer interventions. It's almost an impossible task. So marrying the teacher's ability to offer really personalized instruction with the technology's ability to pinpoint where these gaps are is where that magic lies.
I'm curious about what the biggest challenges you face in your work and what you're trying to achieve. Is it implementation? Is it technology gaps for teachers or devices themselves? What gets in the way the most?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what gets in the way the most is just how busy everybody is, how overwhelmed everyone is in the education system, and it's real. Everybody is dealing with so many different balls they're trying to keep in the air, and so thinking about innovation, thinking about how we can do things that are different takes some additional cycles. It takes time, it takes a thoughtful approach, and it's really hard sometimes to slow down when you're really overwhelmed with everything. So we often hear, listen, our teachers they just have too much. We can't take on something new, and I think it's a real problem. And I think really it really takes a leader, someone who's a leader in a district who wants to try something just completely different, who wants to totally innovate, and who can really rally teams around them to do something different and better. Because it is extra, it's new, it's change, and in every facet of life that's hard. But when you're overwhelmed, like the education system is right now, it's extra hard.
Julia Dexter is the founder of Shoelace Learning, an education platform that connects popular video games to personalized learning with a focus on reading comprehension skills. She spoke with senior producer David Lyons.
The the WDET newsroom, the city of Detroit has more than 1,400 beds for people who need shelter from the Arctic cold. Individuals, families, and young people seeking placement in a shelter or warming center can call the Housing Resources Hotline at 866-313-2520. As well, the White House has rescinded or frozen nearly $21 billion worth of clean energy projects in Michigan. That includes about $400 million to help families weatherize their homes.
Coming up at 11, we look back at snow days of the past and discuss recent ones too, and we'll defrost your memories of snow days. It has us wondering, do you think snow days are called too often? Give us a call, 313-577-1019. Up next, a cigar lounge at Detroit Metro Airport might be a real drag. We'll learn what people are saying about the potential for it from the Detroit documenters. They go to all the city's public meetings to keep us informed on how Detroit is changing. This is the Metro. Stay with us.